Hello and welcome to the next episode in our Bash programming series. Today we will take a look at loops. Well, as you probably know, loops simply execute a block of code multiple times until some sort of condition is met. Or ranged for loops can iterate through collections. Okay, so let's start with a simple for loop. So for I in, and well, we can iterate through some numbers that are separated by a space. After the for keyword, we have to use do and then done. And this here in between is our block of code that will execute for every item here. So hello for, and let's display a variable I. Okay, nice. Well, we can also use tabs instead of spaces. And this will work pretty much the same. We can write it in a more concise manner using a shell expansion that we discussed in the previous episode. Let's do echo hello shell exp $i. Nice. How does Bash detect that spaces or tabs should separate items? There's a secret environmental variable called IFS that stands for Internal Field Separator. It is used by the shell to determine how to do word splitting. By default, it is comprised of a space, tab, and a new line character. Well, we can change the internal field separator to any characters we want, but we have to be careful with it. So, for example, here, if I do echo $ifs, well, I get an empty string, but it is not actually empty. Okay, let me show you an example. Well, first, it's good practice to save the old ifs value to a variable. And we can set it to, for example, a semicolon. And then let's say we have a variable called myList that has some values. We can use a for loop to iterate through this, but we set the semicolon as our delimiter. Okay, let's see. Nice. Well, if I didn't modify this variable, I would get something like this, because there's a space here. Well, and by default, it separates this string to two items. Well, but ifs only works for one character. If I do something like this, well, we might expect that it will be separated properly again, but that is not the case. It separates the items twice here. So keep that in mind. Okay, and after that, I recommend to do something like this. So ifs equals old ifs. Okay, well, one more thing. If you want to use the internal field separator, like this, well, this will also not work. Let me comment that out. So it does not separate this like even once in this example here. So in for loops, well, it works with a variable, but does not with like a literal string. Okay, let's move on to a different example. There's one more way to do for loops, which is similar to most other programming languages, and that is to use an expression which is separated in three parts. So the first part is declaring the variable, then is the condition that has to be met, and then what happens to the variable. Now, in this example, I would like to draw a simple Christmas tree. Well, I know that Christmas was like a few months ago, but it's a nice example for nested loops. Okay, so we will need some kind of a triangle. So first, let's echo some spaces. That will be the opposite from the beginning. And we use the -n flag to skip the automatic new line. Well, and we get something like this. But whatever. It's okay for now. Next, let's add one more loop that will actually draw our tree. So j equals 0, then well, j is smaller than I times 2 minus 1. It's to j plus plus. Do. Done. Let's echo a simple star. Well, we'll get something like this, just some garbage. So during each iteration in the main loop, let's echo an empty string. That will move us to the new line. We get a nice tree. Okay, let's also draw the tree trunk. So we will need one more for loop outside the main one. So I equals 0 until I is smaller than size minus 1. And do I plus plus. Just echo an empty space, and after that echo a hashtag. And we get a nice tree. Nice. Okay, but it's quite undecorated and bland. Let's add some if statements to combine the knowledge from the previous episodes. So for example, when count is divisible by 5, then let's maybe echo the small triangle instead of an asterisk. Well, we also have to create our count variable and increment it in this for loop. Oops, I forgot to skip the new line. Okay, nice. Let's also use elif. So maybe if count is divisible by 7 instead, then let's echo the @ symbol. Nice. Okay, but there are no colors. And to use colors in Bash and display them on the console, we have to use few special combinations. So if you want something to be of a red color, well, we have to start with an escape character, or left slash 0 free 1 square bracket 0, and then 31 is for red. Well, and let's say I want this to be red. Well, but we get a problem because this is not displayed properly. We have to add the if flag, because if you remember from the previous episode, oops, E stands for enable interpretation of \escapes. Okay, now it's red, but well, everything after that is also red, and we don't really want that. So we have to define a noColor variable, which is quite similar, but it only goes like this, 0m. And after that here, you can use noColor. Nice. Okay, but Christmas trees are typically green, so let's also add maybe green and yellow. And I would like the stars to be, the main part, so green. Maybe this will be yellow. And we also have to add the E flags here. Nice, we get a tree. Let's maybe change the size to 40 to see how it works. Nice. And when it's smaller, well, like maybe 3. Well, it also creates a little Christmas tree. Okay, nice. Okay, and the last part of this tutorial will be the continue, break, and while and until loops. Okay, so let's start with continue and break. Well, if we have continue somewhere inside our loop, then it will skip the rest of the code below and start the next iteration. Well, break stops the loop completely. So for example, here, let's say I have a simple range-based for loop. And I display something like hello $I. Oops, I forgot the in keyword. Okay. Now let's add a condition. For example, if I is equal to 3, then I'm going to continue. And let's see what happens. Oh, I meant finish the if statement. Okay. And 3 is no longer here. Let's also add one more example with a break statement. For example, if I is equal to 8, then let's break the for loop. And it stops after 8 and no longer executes the rest of the numbers. Okay, now let's talk a bit about while loops. So while loops are executed as long as a certain condition is true. So let's create maybe a countdown. If t is greater than 0, do maybe echo remaining time $t. Well, it executes forever, because t will be always greater than 0. So we have to decrement it. Okay, nice. So as long as t is greater than 0, execute this block of code. And then echo maybe boom. See that it ended. Now let's do the same thing with until. Well, until is pretty much the same as while, but the loops are executed until the condition is true. So it can be false and it will still be executed, as you can see here. So that's like the opposite of a while loop. Okay, so that would be it for this episode. In the next one you will see how to operate on arrays. So stay tuned and see you later. Goodbye.